Welcome, Drink with James, episode 111, 111. I'm going to start off and say something. We have a podcast. Every once in a while, people are like, why don't you have a podcast? I wish you had a podcast. I listen to the YouTube, videos as if they're podcasts. We actually have a podcast. It is no different. It is just the audio from the videos put into a podcast. So if you search for Forecast in the Apple Store or Stitcher, if you have an Android, you will see every episode is there. We put it up at the same time every week. And so you can listen to this as a podcast if you would prefer not to look at me, which I 100% understand. I wouldn't want to spend 111 episodes watching my hair ever so subtly change. So I do not begrudge you. You can listen to it on either place. There's also be a link in the description here on this video if you are too lazy to search or don't know how to spell casts. So if you're watching this and you haven't bought a ticket to the conference yet, you should change that. Tickets are selling quickly. This one will probably, I assume, will sell out. So especially if you are traveling from out of town, we've got a 15% discount at the 11 Howard, which is the Blogueurs hotel of choice. So you get a little discount there for the whole weekend. So if you want to make a weekend of it, the conference is on a Friday, but you can stay the whole weekend and get the discount for the entire weekend. We are also offering a payment schedule for tickets. So it's $300 for the next 3 weeks.
Until September.
So it's $300 until September. But if you sign up this month, you can split that into 3 payments. So if you haven't checked it out, if you haven't looked at the site, do that. I'm sure we'll put a link there as well. If you haven't signed up, do. If you have questions, you can email myself or Tim and ask them. But I expect to see each and every one of you at the Crosby Hotel on October 12th or else. Okay. Question number 1 is, how, as an influencer, should you be communicating to brands? We talked a little bit about brand communication. I've talked about this a lot. You can, if you haven't gone to the Drink with James search engine in a while, you can go and always just type in communicate or communication, and you can see I've definitely touched on this. I think what I want to stress this week when I'm talking about brand communication is I have yet to see an influencer, and correct me if I'm wrong, and send me an email if I'm incorrect here. I've yet to see an influencer who has a brand-specific newsletter. So you have your newsletter that you subscribers subscribe to, for lack of a better term. So you've got that normal consumer-facing newsletter, but I've yet to see a newsletter that's specifically for brands. And if I was an influencer and I was doing this full-time, once a month, I would send an email to every brand contact I had, everyone who had reached out for a collaboration, everyone I'd met at a party, every business card that I had gotten from a brand person. I would have a newsletter that said, here's what I've been working on, here's some sponsored posts I did, here's some exciting new things I've been thinking about, here's a vacation I'm going on, here's the opportunities I'm looking for. Whatever it might be, it is a scalable, easy way for you to stay in touch with brands every single month, stay top of mind, and kind of, again, scale out those communications. So you don't have to actually write out the emails individually to each brand person every month. So I'm gonna keep this brief, but once a month, newsletter just for brands, send it out. I think that it is something I've never seen anyone do, and I think you would make a lot of money from it because you would just stay top of mind. Once a month, they'd be seeing something from you, they'd be seeing what you're doing, they'd be seeing new projects you'd be working on. You're that much more likely to get the next brand deal. So once you start it, feel free to put me on it. So if you start a brand newsletter, I want to see it, forward it to me, or add me, james@fohr.co. I would love to see that. Tim was asking if you should curate the list in case you did a post for a competitor, something like that. If you did a post for Pepsi, should you send it to the person that you know at Coke? I think it's totally fine. In this space, brands understand that there's going to be overlap. You're going to work with their competitors. Hopefully, it is you have the foresight to space those things out and not work with Pepsi May 1st and Coke May 7th. But I wouldn't worry about getting too crazy about customizing it and segmenting it and sending it. I would love if in years you had a huge list and you had a beauty one that you sent to your beauty clients and a fashion one to your fashion clients and a home one to your home clients. But let's start with something simple. Get it out there, send it to me. Question number 2. How do we feel about influencers promoting products that they don't use? Great question. I feel very bad about influencers promoting products that they don't use. Anytime you do a sponsored post, you should be spending a week with that product at least beforehand, getting to know it, getting to understand it. I know brands now send you these long briefs and they say, what are the key messages? What are the do's and don'ts? What's the mood board look like? What's the creative direction? They give you everything that they want. And in a lot of ways, you could create a on-brief post for that brand without ever using the product. This is especially true of, let's say, something with beauty or hair care or skin care, right? Like, you could shoot the flat lay, you could hold the product, and you could list out the key messaging that they sent you without ever using it. We have been trying to push this idea of something that we call conversational conversion. So it is a, kind of roll your eyes buzzword that explains a fairly simple concept, which is we are trying to get influencers more and more to speak to their communities as if they are trying to convince a friend of something. So if you tried this new moisturizer that you really, really loved, and you went to dinner with a friend and you were raving about this moisturizer, talking about why they should use it, that language that you would use to convince your friend is the same language that you should be using on your feed. Conversational conversion. You are having a conversation with your audience. It shouldn't get too, you can't get too tripped up by the key messages of a brand. Now, you have to hit what the brand wants you to talk about, but you need to make sure you do it in your voice. And I encourage all influencers to do 2 things when they are doing a sponsored post for a brand. 1, use the product for a week. Think about what makes it different. How is it different from competitors? What does it make you feel like? What does it make you look like? What is special about it? What is interesting about it? Talk to people about it. I'm using this thing. I'm doing this. Try and form an opinion about it. Now, you're being paid. You're going to have to speak, well about the product. And I assume you wouldn't do a post for a brand that you didn't support. But going through this process of actually using it is going to help you build what that caption is going to be, what the creative is going to be for the post, how you're going to speak about it. And then once you've used it for a week, you go to do your post, think about convincing a friend to use it. Think about the language you would use to do that and try and use that language. Sometimes the sponsor posts are feeling too cold, they're feeling too mechanical, they're feeling too controlled by the brand. You have to be able to use your voice, and not just your voice in that like you are kind of irreverent and you make a little joke, but I'm talking about the voice you would use to convince a friend to use a product. Try and use that same reasoning on your post for the brand. It's a simple thing. I don't think a lot of people do it. And it is rooted in your ability to speak confidently about the brand, and that ability is rooted in you actually using the product and understanding it and understanding its benefits. So absolutely paramount. I would be very disappointed if we worked with an influencer and they didn't have a lot of experience actually using the product before they posted about it. Yeah, good question. Should you use it after the collaboration? I think folding those products into your life as a part of your life makes total sense. I think it helps with credibility for your followers, showing that to them a couple times, tagging it in Insta stories. Sometimes you don't even have to tag it. I talked to Erica from Retro Flame. She talked about this. She said in the weeks leading up to a In the weeks leading up to a collaboration and in the weeks after a collaboration, she will show the product on her stories, and sometimes she won't tag it, but at least people get used to seeing that brand so that when she does the post, she can say, y'all have probably seen this laying around my house. I've been using it for a few weeks. I love it. That is such a more compelling story than, I love the soft feel of this new moisturizer. It leaves my skin feeling silky smooth. You should try it today. You're like, fuck you. Like someone sent you that caption, that you don't believe any of that. So make it a part of your life before and after the campaign. Question 3 is, how can I get into the big shows at Fashion Week? So it is that time again. We just sent out our list of Fashion Week registrations. We've got over 1,000 people who have said they're coming to New York for New York Fashion Week. It is that time of year. I'm not going to talk about Fashion Week and whether you should go, but I'm almost positive I'm going to answer that question in the next few weeks because I'm sure somebody is going to ask, should I go to Fashion Week? I've seen 15 bloggers taking polls from their audience, should I go to Fashion Week? Which is, for me, is very eye-rolly. It's like, hey everyone, should I don't know, I'm like so over Fashion Week, but like, if you guys think it's important, I'll go. It's like, oh, fuck you, just make up your mind. Like, I think the polls asking your audience if you should go to Fashion Week are nauseating. They're so frustrating. They're just like full of entitlement. I hate it. And it's wrapped up in this like, I want to give my audience what they want, which is total bullshit. It feels very self-serving. That's that. Let's put that aside. We're not talking about that today. I'm not going to get derailed. How can you get into the big shows? So, few big PR companies kind of run things at Fashion Week. A lot of the big fashion PR companies in the city, HL Group, KCD, Allison Broad, Purple PR, what's the other one? LaForce now, do a lot of the shows. So, the easiest way to get into the shows is building relationships with the big fashion PR companies in the city. You can do a search for those, find them, reach out to them, say, I'd love to be considered for Fashion Week shows. How can I kind of say that I'm interested in going? So just email them. If you've never been to Fashion Week before, you need to think, let's take 2 years, 4 Fashion Weeks. Okay, let's say you want to go to the big shows in 2 years. You want to, with the PR companies, you want to kind of build your name up inside those companies. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to invite you to the presentations. The presentations are not as exciting. They're going to invite you to the ones that they're having a harder time getting people to come to. Go to those presentations, cover them, send emails to the brands, tell them you went, show them your post, do them a favor. You're not doing them a favor by going to Chanel. Everybody wants to go to Chanel. There are brands that are more difficult to get people to go to. It is their fucking job to get people to go. Help them be good at their job. Do something, wait for it, for someone else. Imagine. Help them out. So, you could email them and say, hey, first time going to Fashion Week, I'm so excited. If there's any presentations or shows that, aren't as heavily attended, I'd love to be considered. That is a very humble way to come into it. That is what it will feel like to the PR people. You have to understand I know influencers talk about how busy Fashion Week is, and it is very busy for influencers. It is fucking insane for PR people. They would be working 3 or 4 shows a day. They're in the office till 3 or 4 in the morning while you're at the after party for Alexander Wang. They're closed up in a fucking office clipping, doing clippings for press mentions for all their shows, getting those reports to the brands the next day. It is a very stressful time. It is not their job to make sure that you have a fun Fashion Week. So try and be humble, try and be realistic with your ask, and see what you can do for them. Beyond that, then it's a relationship game. You have to grow your following. You have to be They've only got so many seats allocated to influencers. That allocation is growing every year, so it gets easier and easier to get into these shows. They're also making shows bigger and bigger to accommodate more people as the industry changes and as Fashion Week changes. But end of the day, it becomes a numbers game or a relationship game. So you can either build really strong relationships or you can just have really big numbers. To get into those really coveted shows, to get into the Dior's, to get into the Balenciagas, the Celines, the Chanel's, the Louis Vuittons, you're going to have to build strong relationships. You're going to have to find the people at those brands, and you're going to have to try and ingratiate yourself. But you know, as busy as the time it is for PR people, it is also fun. And I think if you're honest and say, I have always loved this brand, and I understand that it is 100% probably not feasible for me to go to the show now, but one day I would love to. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. Be humble. Understand that if this is your first Fashion Week, it's a journey. And each year you'll get more and more access, you'll build more and more relationships, it'll get more and more interesting. And if you do a good job for the brands, they will continue to invite you. They will talk amongst their PR firm. Oh, I invited her to a show, she was great, she did a bunch of coverage, she sent me a report, she's awesome. So be professional, be humble, do a good job. That is my advice. That's totally fine. Cheers.